DJ Scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Hood rich.
Get it out the mud.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And this evening, we have some appetizers for you. We got UFC 305, Plessis versus Adesanya, and this is coming at you just 2 weeks after UFC 304, which was kind of came up a little short, was a little bit of a disappointment. Not only just the fights and the outcome, but I think just the whole the card itself, the main card itself, the pay-per-view card itself, led to that. And this is this is UFC 305 Plessis versus Adesanya, and this will be August 18th, 2024. In the United States, 9 p.m. Central, but it'll be like sometime in the morning and Sunday at Perth, Australia, at the RAC Arena. But to talk about the card itself and why it's kind of built up a little bit, kind of similar to US 304, just in regards that there's not a lot of, there's a lot of talent and great fighters on the card, but no like superstar names, and only one title is being defended, and it's a lot of it's smaller weight classes. Like there's no light heavyweights, and I guess I guess that's not terrible when it comes to just the smaller weight classes. There's middleweights and heavyweights and welterweights on the main card. But hopefully this card, it's kind of like UFC 304. It had potential to be good, but it just kind of came up a little short. But hopefully UFC 305 can do better, and that is just 2 weeks after that. That's nice. So it can maybe make up for that kind of a disappointment of a card. But anyways, let's get into this main card here. So this is UFC 305. Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Sanye, and that'll be for the middleweight title. But let's get into the main card and some of the first fights on the main card. So the first fight on the card is a welterweight bout from Li Jingliang versus Carlos Prats. And this fight, Li Jingliang, he's getting a little bit up there in age, so I'm kind of wondering, like, is this kind of a fight that's kind of set up to maybe pad Carlos Pratt's stats and maybe help him move up in the welterweight division against an older Li Jingliang. Can't say he's washed or over the hill or anything like that, but hasn't been consistent winning. Just in the last, he's 3-3 in his last 6 fights, so he's 500 in his last 6 fights. But he's fought some of the guys he lost to was Neil Magny by decision, Hamzat Chimaev technical submission rear naked choke, which did that to everyone, and then a loss to Daniel Rodriguez. But he kind of mixed in there. He had a bunch of knockouts. All 3 of his wins mixed in there were all knockouts. So that's impressive. So he's either gonna lose by submission, or he's going to get the knockout for how he's been fighting lately. But he has 27 fights in his career, 19 wins, 8 losses. In the 19 wins, he has 10 wins by knockout, 4 wins by submission, and 5 wins by decision. And then the 8 losses, he's tough, even in his extended age, his older age. He's never been knocked out in the 8 losses. Only been submitted twice, and then the rest of his 6 fights have gone. The other 6 fights have all gone to decision. But Li Jiangling, he's a UFC veteran, been in the UFC since 2014. That's and just with how his 500 records kind of appeared, interesting to see uh, what the outcome will be against a kind of a younger, new up and coming fighter. But I mean, Li Jiangling, he's been in the UFC for a long time, been in the welterweight division for a long time. Has like what 16 wait, no, eight, eight knockouts in the welterweight division. He's second most all time. And then he's fifth welterweight division in stoppages as well with eight. So that must include submissions and knockouts. But I mean, coming into the UFC and mixed martial arts, he was kind of more his base kind of skill was like wrestling, you know. But since he got to the UFC, he's been more of a knockout artist than anything, which that kind of shows with the 10 knockouts that he's amassed in his career. So he's fighting Carlos Prats, who's a younger fighter. He's just I don't know, I think yeah he'll turn 31 tomorrow, and he's a fighter that hadn't been in the UFC too long. But the reason I kind of think that he's kind of set up with this match with Li Jiangling is because he was successful on Dana White's Contender Series, and then his two fights after that on UFC Fight Nights and UFC ESPN. He got knockouts in all of those fights. Uh, Mitch Ramirez, Trevin Giles, and Charlie Radtak. Uh, so no real notable names. So this is definitely a big step up in competition for him. But he's I would say he's a striker, kickboxer. Prefers the knockout. That's his main path to victory. But in his last six fights, he's 6-0 in his last six fights, and he's 3-0 in his three fights in the UFC. So you can kind of see where the potential for a up and coming star, a new face to the division. You can kind of see where that conclusion could kind of come from. But and Carlos Pratt's let's see here, 15 total fights in the 19. He has 19 wins and six losses. So that's actually so yeah. So that's 15. So in the 19 losses, he has 14 wins by knockout, 3 wins by submission, and 2 wins by a decision. So I mean, he definitely wants to keep it standing and keep it striking and try to get the knockout, which that's where I do see Li Jiangling having probably the advantage here. I think out of the two, I would say that he's probably the one more likely to shoot for a takedown and try to wrestle first. But then so Li Jiangling, 19 wins, and then he has 6 losses. He has been knocked out twice. I don't think Li Jiangling's he's never been knocked out, Li Jiangling. So that kind of is that kind of adds an element to this fight. So Carlos Prats has been knocked out twice, has been submitted 3 times, and then has won just one fight by decision. So for the most part, it seems like no matter which way the fight goes, it looks like for the most part, Carlos Pratt's fights are gonna end in a stoppage. He's only had 3 fights in his 15-fight career go to decision. But this is really a tough one for me to pick. You know, Li Jiangling has more experience and probably has a better ground game, but he hasn't been overly impressive in his last 6 fights. You know, but at the same time, Carlos Pratt's his main key to victory is getting the knockout. But man, Li Jiangling's never been knocked out, so this is a really tough fight for me to pick. But I got to pick one here. So in this first bout between welterweight bout, Li Jiangling versus Carlos Pratt, the Nightmare. I think I'm going to go with the young gun here in this fight. And I think Li Jingliang, he's 36 years old. He's getting up in there in age. As you get older, you kind of keep your strength, but your durability and your chin kind of start to go a little bit. And hadn't seen that yet from Li Jingliang, but I think we're going to see that in this fight, and maybe in the later rounds. Later in the second round, maybe the start of the third round. So in this welterweight bout between Li Jingliang versus Carlos Pratt, I'm taking Carlos Pratt in this one. I think he's going to get the knockout in this fight. For your first time, you're going to get to see it. Li Jingliang going to sleep. All right, let's see. And now on to a much easier fight for me to pick is the second fight on UFC 305, and that is a heavyweight bout, Taya Tuivasa versus Jarino Rosenstruik. Right, and so I don't know if you guys remember any of my comments about Taya Tuivasa in his last couple fights. It's just hasn't looked good. I'm one of the uh, media people, podcasters out there that even though he's just 31 years old and has only been fighting since December 13th. I'm one. Let's see, not December 13th. Let's see. Yeah, since July 2012. Uh, so he's been fighting for a while, but just in his recent fights, he's had a heck of a time with the brutal losses that he's taken, and not brutal in that they've been like upsets or losing split decisions. He's been getting knocked silly and choked to put to sleep. Uh, it's just been bad. It's been bad. So I'm one of those people, podcasters out there saying maybe he needs to hang it up. Maybe he needs to put the gloves down because in these last six fights, and not even the six fights. So I mean, he's 2-4 in the last six fights, but he's 0-4 in his last four, and he's lost them all by knockout. So he was knocked out cold by Cyril Gane, knocked out cold by Sergey Pavlovich, put to sleep by Alexander Volkov, and then put to sleep by Marcin Tybura. Just brutal ways to lose. Uh, Devastating ways to lose. So he's been put to sleep, literally put to sleep by submissions twice in less than a year. So that's a little bit concerning. Uh, and he had been actually knocked out by Sergey Pavlovich and Cyril Gane back in 2022. But I mean, he's been actually put to sleep. Just going back to September 10th, 2023. So that's been less than a year that he's been choked out. I don't really know what causes more damage to you mentally and physically, the getting knocked out or put to sleep, the lack of oxygen to your brain, or just getting that button hit and your brain getting shut off. I don't really know which is worse than that, but due to that his recent record and resume not looking too good, I think you guys can kind of see where I'm starting to lean. But Jaya Tuivasa, he's a fun fighter about 2-3 years ago, and he's a fan favorite because he's from Australia and they're in Perth, and he's drinking from the shoey and all that. Everybody loves that, but I'm just trying to be realistic. He's just strictly a striker, and he pretty much stands in front of whoever he fights until he falls down or until they take him down and choke him out. So he's fighting a unit, a big guy, a big boy. Big boy, his nickname literally Jarizin Big Boy Rosenstruik. So yeah, he's fighting a big guy and a knockout artist in Rosenstruik, and he's had a bit of a bumpy up and down career in his last six fights as well. Can't say they're much better. The difference is, I guess, not all of them is he's getting knocked out and put to sleep. And two of them, he got submitted rear naked choke, and then Alexander Volkov knocked him out too. But he's 3-3 in his last Yeah, he's 3-3 in his last 6 fights, and he's a very similar fighter to Tai Tuivasa, because he just wants to stand in front of you and throw punches until someone falls down, until someone gets knocked out. So he's just strictly a boxer, a kickboxer, you know. And then see, so in his, he has 19 fights in his career, 14 wins and 5 losses. In the 14 wins, he has 13 of them are by knockout. So if he's gonna win, it's gonna be by knockout. No wins by submission. So it's like basically no ground game at all, really. And then 1 win by decision. And then in the 5 losses, he's been knocked out twice. And then he has, even though he doesn't seem to have much ground game, must have decent defense, because he's only been submitted once and then 2 by decision. And then I forgot to go over Tuivasa's just total record. We're just bashing him for his last 4 fights. Let's get in there for his total career. So see, so 2021, he has 21 fights, so similar number of fights on his career as Rosenstruck. Very similar fighters, except Tai Tuivasa is about 5 years younger, but I think the amount of damage he's taken over his last 4 fights kind of cancels that out a little bit. But in his 21 fights, he has 14 wins, 7 losses, and just like Rosenstruck, he has 13 wins by knockout, and then none by submission and none by decision. So they're very, very similar fighters. Definitely their fighting style and their path to victory is like exactly the same. Like pretty much no ground game or submission game. Like they just want to keep it standing, and they want to stand in the middle of the octagon until someone falls down. And with their recent history and what's been happening with their resumes recently, I'm interested. It'd be kind of interesting to see if one of them actually does shoot for a takedown. You know, thinking like I can't just stand in front of this hoss and throw punches until for recent history shows that I'm the one falling down. So yeah, and so exactly the same in their wins and path to wins. And then he has more losses, a couple more losses than Rosenstruck. He has 7 losses, 3 by knockout, 3 by submission, and 1 by decision. So most pretty evident that if he's going to lose, he's going to get stopped. So I think you guys already know where I'm going with this. So heavyweight, in the second bout on UFC 305, in the heavyweight bout between Tai Tuivasa versus Jarinho Big Boy Rosenstruck. I'm taking Big Boy. I'm taking Rosenstruck to win this. I'm taking him to win this by knockout, and I think it's going to happen in the first round. Someone's going to sleep in the first round. If it ain't Tai Tuivasa, then it's going to be Big Boy who's going to sleep. But I can't in good conscience, after seeing the last 4 performances of Tai Tuivasa, pick him to win. Like if he gets knocked out cold again or put to sleep again in any way, I think he just needs to call it a career, hang them gloves up, or go to a different organization competition isn't as quite as high. All right, so now then on to the third fight on the card. We have a lightweight bout between Mateus Gamrot versus Dan Hooker. And so just the easiest way to kind of define Mateus Gamrot is he's like the lightweight version. He's like the lightweight version of Bilal Muhammad. You know, he's a wrestler, a submission wrestler from Poland, and I think a little bit of the difference between Bilal Muhammad and him is that Mateus Gamrot gets more stoppages. Actually has more stoppages. And see, in his last 6 fights, he is 5-1 in his last 6 fights, and he's had TKOs, but seems like that's been a pretty common thing here lately in some of these fight cards, and I'm going over some of these fighters' resumes. A lot of them got like wins due to like injuries, like knee injuries and stuff. So he had a submission slash TKO, I guess, over Carlos Ferreira, and then kind of like Tom Aspinall and stuff he'd been dealing with, losing a fight due to a knee injury. He beat Rafael Fiziev with due to a knee injury. But those are the only in his last 6 fights. Those are the only knockouts. I almost don't even count the Fiziev one. And then the rest have been like just decisions and split decisions, and lost at one by decision. Benel Dariush, but he's definitely strictly, for the most part, a wrestler and wants to get you down and get the ground and pound. And if he can secure a submission, that's what he's going to do. But in his 27 fights, he has 24 wins, 2 losses, and then 1 no contest. In the 24 wins, he has 8 wins by knockout. So even though he's got such a great game, ground game, it's not necessarily strictly submissions he's looking for. If he gets you down and hurt, or if he rocks you on the feet and is able to get you in a compromising position on the ground, he can finish you with ground and pound too. And then he does have 5 wins by decision. And then similar to Benel Dariush, he has 11 wins by decision. So it's not uncommon for his fights to go to decision. And then in the 2 losses, he's never been knocked out, never been submitted, and has only lost 2 by decision. So he's a tough, durable fighter. Doesn't put himself in very many compromising positions, or puts himself out there to risk any chances of getting caught or knocked out in the striking game. Like he knows that his path to victory is wrestling and submission game. But if he's able to catch something, catch a fighter early on with something standing to set a stoppage in motion, he can do that too. All right, so now his opponent, Dan Hooker. That is one of the, I don't know if it was a meme or just over the last year or so. I seen a picture of Dan Hooker, and I remember Dan Hooker from some of his previous fights. He's got like platinum colored hair, and he didn't have like any tattoos in his last fight or 2 fights ago. But in this meme, it shows him with his platinum hair combed over, and he's got no tattoos. And then in the other one, he's completely tatted up, like he's got looks like he's got several $1,000s worth of new tattoos on him. So he must wanted to change his personality or change who he is. That seems like a bit of a midlife crisis to me. Maybe he thought it would improve his overall rating on UFC. What is it? UFC 4, I think. UFC 4, UFC 5, the video game. Maybe it would raise his overall or something, make him tougher, look more believable as a UFC fighter. But sounds like a midlife crisis to me. Even though he's only 34, be 35 in February. But he's kind of like the opposite of Mateus Gamrot. He wants to keep it standing and try his kickboxing. But I would say he's out of some of these fighters, I'd say he's more of a true mixed martial artist. I think that probably helps that he's had 35 fights in his career. But in his last 6 fights, he's 3-3, so he's 500, kind of like Li Jiangling. But he is on a two fight winning streak. Has a win over Claudio Polias with a TKO body kick, and then Jalen Turner, who is a pretty young up and coming fighter. He actually beat him at catchweight. That was catchweight, and that was like a year ago. That was July 8th, 2023. That was catchweight because Turner missed weight at 185, but beat him in a split decision. I think I remember that fight. I think a lot of people thought that Jalen Turner actually won. And Jalen Turner, he's rose in the ranks of lightweight since then. So, but he's had 35 fights with 23 wins and 12 losses. So he's had a lot of losses too. But in the 23 wins, he has 11 wins by knockout. So he's some more knockouts than Mateus Gamrot, more finishes actually in general. And then he has even more submission victories as well, 7 submissions and five wins by decision. And then in the 12 losses, he's lost 3 by knockout. He's been knocked out 3 times. He's been submitted 3 times, and then he's lost uh, six fights by decision. And in his last 2 losses, he got knocked out by punches and elbows by Arnold Allen, and then he was submitted by Islam Makhachev Kimura. Yeah, this is a little bit tougher. This is a little bit tougher of a fight to pick than the Tuivasa Rosenstrike fight, but I think I'm going to go with the fighter that's a little bit more elite in their game and is on a little bit more of a heater than Dan Hooker, just in regards to, he's not 5-0 in his last 6 fights, and it seems like he's might be just 1 or 2 more wins from maybe getting a title shot. So see. So I think I'm going to go with, so in this lightweight bout between Mateus Gamrot versus Dan Hooker, I think I'm going to go with Mateus Gamrot. I think he's just going to pretty much just control the entire fight just with his strength and his ability to take Dan Hooker down, and just if it's not even taking him down, I think he's going to just be able to hold on to him and push up against him. And I think he may end up slipping in, getting Dan Hooker in some type of compromising position, and maybe slip a choke in. All right, so that's so I got Mateus, lightweight bout between Mateus Gamrot versus Dan Hooker. I got Mateus Gamrot. I got him win by submission. All right, so now then we're on to the co-main event, which is a flyweight bout between Kai Kara-France versus Steve Erceg. And both of these fighters are coming off flyweight title shots. Steve Erceg, just in his last fight, was against Alexander Pantoja for the flyweight belt, and then 2 fights ago, Kai Kara-France fought Brandon Moreno, or that was all the way back in 2022. That was like 2 years ago. He hasn't been overly active, only having like 1 fight a year. But Kai Kara-France, he's definitely a great striker. Has good Muay Thai and kickboxing. I'd say out of the 2, he's probably has the better striking, and is definitely a veteran. Even only being 31 years old, he's had 36 fights, had a bunch of fights. He's even with the recent title shot and people, him. Let's see, what is he ranked? He's ranked number 4 in the flyweight division, even though he hasn't won in his last 2 fights, hasn't won a fight, and has only been fighting like once every year. But he has 36 fights with 24 wins, 11 losses. So he has a lot of losses. He's fought for a long time, even though he's still pretty young. But he's shown that he's had some durability issues. Just happens to you after a while with so many fights. But in the 24, so he has 24 wins, 11 losses, and 1 no contest. In the 24 wins, he has 11 wins by knockout, 3 by submission, and 10 wins by decision. So he can either knock you out or he can go the distance, is what I'm taking from that. Wish I wouldn't be surprised, but I wish I knew for sure if this was a 5-round fight, kind of a flyweight title eliminator bout. I could see that being what this is. And then he has 11 losses, so he has quite a few losses. Has been knocked out 3 times, been submitted 3 times, lost uh, lost 5 by decision. So he can, at the same time of being able to beat you and being able to finish you, stop you, or get you, go the distance with you. He can do that, and L's as well, L's as well. So, and then just the one no contest. So I believe he's probably got the better striking, but at the same time, I believe that Steve Ursay probably has the better wrestling ability. Astro Boy Steve Ursay, who's still a relatively young fighter as well, only 29 years old. I would say, yeah, he's more of a ground game submission artist compared to him, and he's been more active as well, which I like that about Steve Ursay. He's been more active, and he's 5-1 in his last 6 fights, and he is 3-1 in his last 4 fights. His 4 fights in the UFC, and his last fight was a loss for the flyweight championship belt against Alexander Pantoja, which he lost by unanimous decision. I don't really remember. I don't think he was ever really close to winning that fight against Alexander Pantoja. I think Alexander Pantoja was always kind of a step ahead in that fight. But he's still. We're talking about Steve Ursay, the Astro Boy. He's from Perth, Australia, so I'm sure the fans will love him. But he's still a relatively young fighter and hadn't been in a lot of fights. Has only been in has had 14 fights with 12 wins and then 2 losses. In the 12 wins, he has 2 wins by knockout, but the majority of his wins, he has 6 wins by submission and and four 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 by decision, and then he has 2 losses. Let's see, so 2 losses. Never been knocked out, never been submitted, and 2 fights have gone to decision. But I say he's more of a ground who would rely on and go to the takedown attempt first would probably be Steve Ursay. And when it's striker versus wrestler, and then it's, I want to say, not really age because they're only like two years different, but just the more active, and a fighter that fights multiple times a year than a fighter that only fights like once a year. That kind of tells me that fighter is just more durable and healthier. So we try and think, like, all of these first 3 fights, I've picked a knockout, and then a submission choke. And Steve Ursay's only losses have come by decision, and 15 fights in Kayakar, France have gone to decision. But I think I'm going to go with the slightly younger fighter and the more active fighter in this fight to win this. So in this flyweight bout between Kayakar, France versus Steve Ursay, I'm going to go with Steve Ursay. I'm going to go with the wrestler, the submission artist, the ground game expert, and just the fighter that's been probably healthier and more active to win this. But I think both of these fighters are very durable, and it's no problem for them to go the distance in a win or a loss. So in the flyweight bout between Kayakar France versus Steve Ursay, I got Steve Ursay to win this. I think he's just going to win by decision. Nothing too exciting. All right. So now then, on to the main event. The main event. We have Dricus du Plessis, the champion, versus Israel Adesanya, the former champion and the challenger. And so, just a little bit of background for this fight, of whether it's a heated rivalry or this is a grudge match or not. They try to have the pre-fight press conference that get a little bit of drama out of everybody, and there really wasn't. there really wasn't any out of any of the other fighters. You know, they were pretty much respectful to each other, or just didn't really even acknowledge the other fighter being there at the press conference. So you didn't really get any heat from any of the other fighters, but you definitely felt that between Dricus du Plessis and Israel Asanya. And I think the thing that really is what digs at Israel Asanya is when is the comments and the quotes and the statements and yelling over the microphone after fight post fight interviews is Dricus du Plessis saying that he's the first and the only actual African champion in the UFC. And man, that really rubs Israel Adesanya, Kamaru Usman, and Francis Ngannou the wrong way. And I get it. I get it. You don't have to spell it out for you. It kind of spells itself out for itself. But at the same time, it's a fact. It's a fact. Israel Adesanya, Kamaru Usman, and Francis Ngannou, they weren't born and raised and currently live in Africa, but Dricus du Plessis does. So it's something I don't even like talking about or even saying it, but it's almost something like reverse racism. It's weird and it's confusing. And Israel Adesanya was obviously way too upset about it because he was talking about how he's coming back for this fight and that he's refocused and he was getting into how he wants to do this for his fan and his people. And he actually started crying due to that. So I don't know if that's just a good acting and it adds to the the controversy and the want and the expectation for this fight. I don't know what people are waiting for, what that really adds to it. But I think it's just funny. Seems as Dricus du Plessis definitely has gotten under Israel Adesanya skin a little bit. But I guess we'll definitely see if that's real or not. You always see this kind of stuff from fighters, the anticipation for the fight, that adds something to the anticipation of the fight. But you always kind of see this stuff where these fighters are like screaming mad, and build up to the fight, and then when the fight actually happens, then they're super cautious and very reserved and just don't want to get stopped. Uh, Makhachev, that fighter that got fired from the UFC, or at least didn't get re-signed, he's a perfect example of that, acting crazy towards his opponent before the fight, showing up at his hotel room before the fight, having to be held back during the pre-fight introductions and stuff, and then just does nothing in the actual fight. And I don't think as a proven champion in Israel Adesanya, I don't think we'll have to worry about seeing that. But to see him come in screaming, raging, mad, and just throwing overhand bowls, I don't think you'll see that. But so we have so the champion. We're talking a lot about Israel Adesanya. So we're talking about Dricus du Plessis, who's actually from the South African Dricus du Plessis, and your current middleweight, current welterweight, current middleweight champion, is on quite a bit of a heater here. He hasn't lost a fight since 2018, and he is 7-0 in his UFC fights. Let's see, with only 2 of those fights actually going to decision. All the other ones have been, majority of them, been knockouts and chokes. Let's see, and in his 23 fights, he has 21 wins and just 2 losses. In the 21 wins, he has 9 wins by knockout, 10 wins by submission, and two wins by decision. So he's definitely looking for the finish. And then in the 2 losses, he has one loss by knockout and 1 loss by submission, and then none none of his fights go to decision really, whether the win or the loss. One of the very few on just one of the two was the most recent fight uh, over Sean Strickland that went to decision, and just from the looks of it, the pictures of his face and stuff, and definitely uh, a lot of fans and analysts out there probably thought Sean Strickland won that fight just due to the damage that Dricus du Plessis accumulated just like in the first couple rounds. Had his eye all swollen up, broken broken nose, a injured foot. Like he was took a lot more damage in that fight to win the middleweight championship bout, but he won it. And I see this fight kind of similar because Sean Strickland never really looked for a takedown, and Dricus du Plessis was just kind of walking through his punches, even though he was taking damage due to them. But he must have not thought that any of the damage or any of the punches would be enough to stop him. And I kind of look at the similar to Israel Adesanya because he hasn't knocked anyone out. Yeah, so he got a knockout about a year ago, back in April against Alex Pereira, which is very impressive. But then had a disappointing fight against Sean Strickland, where it just didn't look like he was that overly motivated or had that hunger, and just his striking and didn't look as crisp or or as if it had any like real power behind it. It just was kind of a lazy performance, honestly. A very unimpressive performance, and he got knocked down early in the fight, got rocked early in the fight against Sean Strickland, and just really wasn't able to do anything to Sean Strickland. I feel as if like that's kind of what's going to happen in this fight is that Dricus du Plessis he's going to just try to stand up, for the most part to start the fight, obviously, and he's just going to see if he can walk through Israel Adesanya's punches like he did Sean Strickland. I don't know if Israel Adesanya, being one of your most accurate and skilled and, and on point strikers in UFC history and of middleweights of all time, up there with Al, um, Anderson Silva, if that will make any difference between Dricus du Plessis taking shots from Sean Strickland or him to take shots from Israel Adesanya. If Israel Adesanya is going to have that precision striking, that'll be better to try to hit that button, maybe try to put him to sleep. But I just feel that Dricus du Plessis, he's a younger fighter, only 30 years old. Israel Adesanya is 36. I think, yeah, 36. No, just 30. He just turned 35. But still, that's five years older, and he's been through so many wars, mostly winning, but he's still been in all these wars and fighting all these just straight killers and badasses. That wears on you after a while, and take that damage and being at the pinnacle for so long that can kind of kill your motivation and your hunger. But I just look at Dricus du Plessis as being a younger, hungrier fighter, and I think he's got more power now. Now at this current stage in their careers, has more power and causes more damage from his strike. And it's clear that he has a better ground game, seeing he's got just as many wins by knockout as by submission as he does knockout, because he's got 10 wins by submission. And Israel Adesanya has never really had much of a ground game. Like, his ground game has been more just stopping the shots and the takedowns, and then being so good at getting back up. But I think just that added advantage and skill will help Dricus du Plessis in this fight. So let's just go over these wins and losses real quick. I think you guys kind of see where I'm starting to lean for this fight, even though I'm a fan of Israel Adesanya. He had one heck of a run. It's right there in comparison with Anderson Silva, how dominant his performance, his career, and his performance, and just overall resume is. But every fighter, at some point, uh, comes to the end of their career, or they're washed up, or don't have a chin anymore. So in his last, I think we kind of went over Dricus du Plessis. We went over his last couple fights. He's had seven straight wins in the UFC. Let's go over Israel Adesanya. I don't think I went over his because he's just strictly like a kickboxer. Pretty much all he is. He's never been submitted, but he's never submitted anyone either. But Israel Adesanya, style bender in his 27 fights. He has 24 wins and just 3 losses. In the 24 wins, he's had 16 wins by knockout. So he's just a precision striker and a knockout artist. A great kickboxer, right up there with, should be probably not quite in the K1 kickboxing Hall of Fame like Alex Pereira, but he's close. But in his last 6 fights, he is 4-1, and he has lost. He's had the 2 of the 3 middleweight title shots that he's had. He's lost. He's lost to Alex Pereira, got knocked out, but then turned around and knocked Alex Pereira back out, but then lost to Sean Strickland, which is why it's a little confusing that Israel Adesanya is getting like this kind of like immediate rematch against the current title holder. You would have almost thought that he'd had or even wanted a rematch against Sean Strickland, or at least have to win the fight over Sean Strickland to get another shot at the belt. So that's a little bit surprising. And let's see. So went through the win. So 3 losses. Just it's only been knocked out once, which that was Alex Pereira, who's just on another level when it comes to kickboxing and striking and knockout ability. And then just the two losses by decision. The one where he just got bullied and overpowered and just wrestled and held down the entire time for a shot at the light heavyweight title against Jan Blachowicz, and then just the disappointing performance that he had against Sean Strickland. So I don't know. Is Sean Strickland your measuring stick for this? Seeing how Dricus du Plessis just ran through every punch and everything Sean Strickland had for him, and even took it and tried for a couple takedowns even. And then Israel Adesanya kind of got made look like a clown and just kind of an unprepared fighter. I think it was because he was expecting to fight Dricus du Plessis for this fight. So maybe he wasn't motivated to fight Sean Strickland like maybe he's going to be in this bout against Dricus du Plessis. But anyways, so we know Dricus du Plessis has the better ground game, but he has just as much power and knockout ability as Israel Adesanya, maybe even more explosiveness and more of a knockout artist than Israel Adesanya. But Israel Adesanya is probably more of the precision striker. But Dricus du Plessis has a ground game that is like non-existent for Israel Adesanya. So just off of recent fights, and that was such a poor performance against Sean Strickland, I think I'm going to go with Dricus du Plessis to win this. And both these fighters are very tough and like hardly ever get submitted or knocked out. And it's a title fight, probably going to go 5 rounds. Dricus has only been stopped twice, and Israel has only been stopped once. So I think this fight's going to go to decision. But I think I'm going to go with the younger gun, and that just more hungrier to be the greatest and the best. Israel Adesanya, he's already reached that pinnacle, and also with financial pinnacle. He says he's made as much money as he needs for his family and in the future, a legacy of wealth. And Dricus du Plessis made that statement a couple times. Once you start making comments like that and and feel that way about the the business that you're in, maybe you just need to hang it up. So in this middleweight bout between Dricus du Plessis uh, versus Israel Adesanya, I'm taking Dricus du Plessis to win this. I think it's just going to go to decision. It may even be split decision. I think this fight may even be similar to the Sean Strickland Dricus du Plessis, where Dricus du Plessis, he may walk through everything Israel Adesanya throws at him, and just that constant pressure he's putting on him of his own striking and his own takedown attempts will give him the win. But he'll take a lot of damage. Like he may be the one that looks like he's lost the fight afterwards. Uh, but I think he's going to win, edge Israel Adesanya out, and retain the middleweight championship bout. All right, so whew, we made it through. Let's just go over these 5 fights on the main card real quick. Let's see, so welterweight. So in the first bout, we have a welterweight bout between Li Jiangling versus Carlos Prats, and I'm going with Carlos Prats to win this. I'm taking the younger guy, the guy coming off of Dana White's series, and has had 3 knockouts, 3 straight knockouts in the UFC. So I'm going to go with him, and I just feel like this may be set up for a win for him, whether it be a knockout or any way it comes, but for him to get kind of a notable name on his record and resume. And then the heavyweight bout between Taya Tuivasa versus Jarin Rosenstruck. I just with just good conscience, I can't pick Tuivasa to win. Like he's gonna get stopped, whether it's knocked out or choked out. That's what's gonna happen. So I got Jarino Rosenstruck to win by knockout. And then in the lightweight bout between Mateus Gamrot, aka lightweight Bilal Muhammad versus Dan Hooker, midlife crisis. Dan Hooker goes from choir boy, no tattoos, kind of like me, to he's tatted up. Interesting. I kind of like to know what the story behind that is. But I'm going with Mateus Gamrot. He's been on a bit of a heater now, and maybe just 1 or 2 more wins from getting a lightweight title shot. So in the lightweight bout between Mateus Gamrot versus Dan Hooker, I got Mateus Gamrot. I think he's gonna at some point in this fight he's gonna get Dan Hooker in some kind of choke, or gonna try to break his arm off. That's what I see happening here. Let's see. And then let's see. So this is the co-main event between Cara France versus Steve Ursay. See, so in this bout, but both of these fighters are very tough. Never really get stopped, and kind of your classic striker versus wrestler. I think I'm going to go with the wrestler in this. I think he's just going to probably just edge Cara France. Obviously they start the fight standing, but I don't think Cara France is like that much better of a striker than him. But I think Steve Ursay, Astro Boy, definitely has a better ground game and submission game. Let's see, and then on the main event, the middleweight championship bout between Dricus du Plessis, the champion, versus Israel Adesanya. I see a lot of a mixture of how Israel Adesanya lost to Sean Strickland, and then how Dricus du Plessis won against Sean Strickland. I see this as a very similar fight. Dricus du Plessis, he's going to be du Plessis, and he's going to make Israel Adesanya kind of his Sean Strickland for this fight, where he's just walking through his punches because he doesn't feel the danger of it, and doesn't feel the power and the knockout ability there, kind of like he just didn't respect Sean Strickland's striking, his power or his accuracy. I think he's going to do that. And after the fight, it's going to I see it going to decision. Dricus du Plessis may look like the one who lost the fight, but he's going to be the one holding on to his title still. So uh, should be a decent card. You know, it's not, doesn't have a bunch of superstar names on there. Only one title shot, title being defended. So it's this card just with the makeup of it reminds me a lot of UFC 304, which kind of came up a little short of what we were expecting, but this card has potential. You have a couple crazy upsets or crazy knockouts or submissions. It can change that feeling about a card real quick. But anyways, I'm ready for it. This is another card kind of like the card. Oh, what was that? That was in Britain, UFC 304, I think. Let's see if I can find it here. That was in London. Yeah, no, it was in Manchester, England. So that card was that like the main card started at like what, like 3 in the morning. So I think this card in Perth, Australia, starts at like in the morning hours of on Sunday. It will actually be on Sunday when it's at 9 p.m. Central Time in the United States. But anyways, I'm ready for it. Hopefully the crowd will still be alive and still have energy once we get to like the co-main event and the main event. But anyways, I'm ready for it, and hopefully we have some exciting outcomes, and hopefully we got some devastating knockouts or insane submissions. That's what I'm here for. That's what I always want to see, and I just want to see a good card, especially for those people that pay for this kind of stuff. You don't want to see an entire card where it's like a 1 second knockout and the rest of the fights are go to decision. But anyways, I think that's all I have for you. So can I get a check, please?